This is going to be a very strange video, and you probably looked at this title and gone, what the flub is that idiot talking about? Which is perfectly fair. It's what my parents say to me all the time. But given that we are in the holiday season, and I'm going to be here, there, and everywhere, and I'm trying to make some pre-content, this idea popped into my head, and I thought, damn it, I'm going to talk about it. Now, actually, the reason I thought about this is because of something that happened on AEW Dynamite on the 18th of December, I believe it was, 2024, when we had Will Ospreay versus Darby Allin in the C2. Now, as far as I'm concerned, that was a late contender for Match of the Year. Will Ospreay basically delivered about 8 Match of the Year contenders in 2024, as he continues to remind you that he is one of the best in the world. But that is true for Darby Allin as well. Now, listen, this is no shade towards Darby. I've been aware of how good he was since, 2019, probably 2020, whenever he started to make waves in AEW. But I'll be perfectly frank with you and say he wasn't one of my guys. Now, that is not a negative. That is not me saying that he's bad. That's not me saying that he sucks. That's not me saying, oh, he's too small to be a wrestler. Nope, none of that. He's absolutely deserving of everything that he has earned. But this is where the idea of the video came from. It actually goes back to when I started watching wrestling and the Hardy Boys turned up. Now, we all know that Jeff Hardy had this crazy popularity because people were just drawn to the guy. And yet my guy, as I've used that word, and guy I'm using as a gender-neutral term here, so if that is wrong, please forgive me, but it's just the way that I've always seen it in my head. I was always drawn to Matt Hardy. Can't tell you why. There was no reason to it. It was just like, well, he's one of my guys. And the reason I bring Darby Allin and Will Ospreay into that as well, because, yeah, Darby Allin was never one of my guys. And then all of a sudden, at the end of this match, when he did get the victory, which kind of shows that sometimes win and losses do matter, and he'd done that crazy coffin drop onto the ring apron, which was so horrible, and made a terrible noise, and they'd done that awesome sequence when he was turning Code Reds into hidden blades, whatever the flub it was. I was like, oh my gosh, I think Darby Allin is one of my guys. And again, it's this incredible magic feeling, as I get way too hoity-toity about this, that exists and can come from nowhere. And I tell you another wrestler this happened to me with, and you're going to go crazy, but look, the truth is the truth. It'd be one Eddie Guerrero. Now, this was when Eddie was absolutely on that wave of popularity. He was kind of done with his lying, cheating, and stealing stuff. I mean, he's still part of his gimmick, but it was portrayed as much more of a babyface than a heel. And once again, was well aware that Eddie Guerrero was one of the best in the world, was well aware that nobody could do Eddie Guerrero. But Eddie Guerrero, I didn't have that thing in my tum-tum. He wasn't one of my guys. Then actually, you'll be surprised to hear, obviously you will not be, if you're aware of my content, that it's when he started doing the chair spot. You know what I'm talking about. He hits someone with a chair, then he just throws it to somebody else and pretends that they've hit him. I was just like, it's the funniest thing, and it's the most entertaining thing I've ever seen in my life. When all of a sudden, poof, I had that moment again, and Eddie Guerrero not only became one of my guys, but it was like a light bulb went off in my head. It's like, how the hell have I not seen this before? But I tell you, there will still be some people, you may be watching it right now, who that light bulb never went off for, and this is the crutch of my argument or my discussion today, as I basically do an elongated TED talk about having guys in wrestling. Like I say, why was Matt Hardy my guy? I met Jeff. Don't know. Why did Darby Allin all of a sudden become one of my guys on that Wednesday? Don't know. Why did Eddie Guerrero doing something funny make me go, ha ha, I love that person? It's the same with Stone Cold and Bret Hart. They, as far as I'm concerned, they're not even my 1 and 2 favorite wrestlers. They're joint first, because one day I'll wake up and it's Stone Cold, and the other day I'll wake up and it's Bret Hart. But even them, I had 2 very different experiences with them. Bret Hart was the guy that got me into wrestling. He didn't even do anything. I was flicking through channels. I presume I probably saw him putting somebody in a sharpshooter, and instantly I was intrigued. I was like, well, who is this guy? He's got cool hair. He's wearing a plink and back attire. That looks pretty badass. And look at this amazing submission maneuver he's doing. I want to know more. Then I started watching. I learned more, and that was it. I was a hitman dude for the rest of my days with Stone Cold Steve Austin, as we know. And I suppose a lot of this is going to come down to booking and stuff. But again, it's all about how you vibe with people, because I bet there's a wrestler in your life that you love that had a terrible character at first, but you're still like, nah, I'm going to follow this guy to the hilt. Stone Cold Steve Austin came in as the ringmaster. Now, some of you may not know about this because you're brand new fans. It was because he'd been fired from WCW due to a tricep injury. He'd gone to ECW and basically become Stone Cold Steve Austin. But for whatever reason, the WWF, as it was at the time, ignored all that, and everyone knew that Steve Austin was an incredible worker, so they brought him in as a quote-unquote good hand. That means he was going to go out there and have good matches with everybody, but he'd lose. Now, he gave him the $1 million title, and we put Ted DiBiase with him as a manager to try and, I don't know, give him the star power we didn't think he had, which is utterly nuts in hindsight. But yeah, he was just a ringmaster. While he was still wearing black trunks and had a bit of green on, I suppose, it was just like, well, who is this guy? Why should I care about this guy? When, as we know, he slowly started to transform into Stone Cold. And I suppose it was due to my age, and it was due to my rebellious nature, and it was just due to the simple story of, workman takes on boss, and all the things that he was doing that was just presented as the coolest thing ever. Nobody knew that it was going to catch fire this way, and the WWF certainly didn't plan it. It caught them by surprise. But the moment I would probably presume he became my guy was long before he won the World Championship, which is doubly weird because it's arguably WrestleMania 13 when he does take on Bret Hart in the submission match, who, as we've already talked about, was my guy. But once again, it was the presentation. It was the never say die attitude. It was the image of blood pouring down his face. And I suppose because I was young and dumb, I'm like, man, this guy's going toe-to-toe with my favorite. Maybe I like him. And then you almost felt a sense of guilt. Like around the same time, people would jump from WWE to WCW on television. And if you were a WWE guy like me, like, man, I shouldn't be doing this. But you wanted to see Goldberg. And the reason I bring this up is because it was the same thing. Goldberg was like destroying fools really on early in his streak. And for whatever reason, I just discovered this, or for whatever reason, it hit me right in the head very, very early on. So anytime I knew that Goldberg was on TV, I was like, well, I want to see who's going to beat this week. And also, it's only going to go 2 minutes. So once again, he became one of my guys. Now, with that one, you could say, but Simon, he was presented so coolly. It's not the point. There are people out there, especially sort of old school wrestling fans, that didn't like this at all because there was no quote unquote selling. There was no storytelling. It was just bam, here comes Goldberg. But again, when you're an impressionable young kid, that is the greatest thing ever. And this is why everybody needs a guy. And there'll be somebody out there right now that I totally don't understand. And somebody will be like, no, they're my favorite wrestler ever. Let's take Lucy, right? Lucy, I know, watches a lot of wrestling content. She knows who she is. She absolutely loves Brandon Cutler. And there are people out there that are like, Brandon Cutler, but that's Lucy's guy, right? She has found a connection with him. She has found something that gets her right in her tum-tum, and she will support that guy till the end. And you need that in pro wrestling. And I think it's something that we do not talk about enough. And I think actually somebody that made a lot of impressions in a similar sense, that wasn't a very good sentence, in 2024, maybe the end of 2023, was Toni Storm, right? Toni Storm, right now she has gone back to the Rock chick, obviously was a very successful and very popular pro wrestler. But what took her to the next level, and again, you can't stay at that level unless you grow your fan base, is when she became Timeless Toni Storm, because she was funny and she was entertaining and she was giving and offering you something that nobody else could, to when, I know I keep repeating myself here, but it's important to get the catchphrase and the go-home line here, so many more people like, oh my gosh, I get it now. And I don't understand how you've come up with this, but also you wouldn't be able to do this in any other setting. That professional wrestling takes her on to a world championship match where she's still having fun with that character right now. And I think probably the person who could be the headline poster boy of all of this would be everybody's favorite controversial figure is flipping CM Punk. Because that guy was away from wrestling for 10 years. And even based on a rumor, even though we all knew what was going to happen, he sells out Chicago because he is coming back to AEW. We then go through all the nonsense that happened there. And again, I'm not picking sides. You have to make your own mind up with that. But he did leave with somewhat of a cloud over his head. Again, there was a lot of chatter. And he pops up at the 2023 Survivor Series. Once again, much like when he made his debut on Rampage, everybody goes crazy. And that's because CM Punk is their guy. They believe in this guy. Everything he did in 2011 especially was like, man, I can vibe with this dude. I know where he's coming from. And because he always spoke with a certain amount of honesty and a certain amount of transparency, and he just told you who he was, it was almost like you were allowed to be the person you wanted to be as well. Again, I mean, this was way before 2011. It was probably like in 2005 or whatever. Here's a guy who's straight edge. He doesn't drink. He doesn't do drugs. He walks by the beat of his own drum. And if you were that kind of outcast, I suppose, for lack of a better term, and you didn't want to drink and you didn't want to do drugs, but you felt pressured by your friendship group, CM Punk was your guy. He told you it was going to be okay, and he just happened to be doing this through the medium of pro wrestling. And this audience has stuck with him forever. It doesn't matter what he did when he walked out in 2014. It didn't matter what he said about WWE. It didn't matter what he did in AEW. It didn't matter what he said about AEW. They will just stick with CM Punk till again, once again, he makes his big return to World Wrestling Federation Entertainment, which is not what the company is called, and people lost their minds. Now, of course, you get the naysayers as well, and more power to you guys as well. But he has such a passionate fan base, and it's because he's their guy. And I love it. I love the concept of their guy, because it can be absolutely everybody. There'll be somebody out there who thinks that Santino Marella was their guy. That's the person that made them watch professional wrestling. It's one of the reasons I go on about Repo Man all the time. I didn't choose to fall in love with Repo Man. It just happened. Now, for me, that kind of spoke about wrestling on a bigger level. I was like, oh my gosh, you can do whatever you want in sports entertainment as long as everybody agrees, because the character makes no sense. But when you get down to the performer, it was the way he played it. It was the way that it probably confused my young brain as I tried to figure out what was happening here, because he said he was a man who wanted to repossess things, but he was basically being a thief. Of course, he was a heel, and eventually I would learn this. But it just is the coolest thing in the world that even though we do have our top guys at the moment, it'd be a Cody Rhodes, it'd be a Roman Reigns, it'd be a Kenny Omega, it would be a Swerve Strickland, it would be whoever you want to choose, right? An MJF, a John Moxley. There will be people down the cards who, of course, every single position within wrestling is important, being your announcer, or a cameraman, or a lighting person. Otherwise, how are we going to get the shebang on the road to begin with? But you could be someone that is always in the opening match, never going to win a title, and there'll be, I don't know, Brian in the crowd who will pop like crazy when you do walk to the ring, because you have done something that resonates with that person. You have done something that connects with that person, and now they want to support you, and they'll buy their merchandise, and they'll watch videos you put up on YouTube, and they'll follow you on social media. They'll be like, hoo ha ha, the biggest cheerleader in the world, and it can change on a dime. Again, Darby Allin was my most recent one, and all of a sudden I was like, I wouldn't mind it if he did win the seed too, and you don't know. I don't think he will, and by the time you've seen this video, I think the Continental Classic will be over. But it was just something that AEW has probably maybe even fallen into without realizing, because I would imagine I can't be the only one. There are hints there that in 2025 he will become the world champion, and you want to make sure all those things are in place before you do get there. So this is one extra step on that journey, there's that horrible word again, that is absolutely going to pay dividends down the line. And who the hell knows who's going to be the next person to create this kind of an atmosphere? I mean, you can argue that AEW maybe needs somebody like this to turn some of the issues they did have around in 2024, which is perfectly fine to talk about. I think it is true. But maybe that's why wrestling is always something that goes on forever. Like, you get it on the independent scene as well. All of a sudden, somebody will come out. Maybe they're from your hometown. Maybe they're just performing on your local shows in your area, and you see them grow in front of your eyes. That's something else with NXT. Do you know who walked out day one and became one of my guys? Oba Femi. And it's not just because he's massive. It's not just because he's unique. It was the walk to the ring. It's the way he looked down opponents. And of course, he smash falls for a while, which, much like the Goldberg effect, is going to make you go, this is so damn fun. But it was more to that. Again, he thought about the personality, he thought about the character, and for whatever reason, it just spoke volumes to me. On the Orange Cassidy situation in 2019, I made a video on What Culture Wrestling saying I thought he was going to be an AEW World Champion one day. I missed my prediction by a while, but I still think that it could happen because, again, as soon as I saw him and as soon as I understood the character, I was just like, this is truly tremendous. But then there are other people, even now, who cannot stand him. I think it's a waste of time, but I don't think anything is a waste in time with pro wrestling because you need to lean into that. Willow Nightingale, that's somebody else, because the first time I saw her cut a promo, she was so happy and she was so nice. My body, because I'm a bit of a loser sometimes, like, I just want to support you and I just want you to win professional wrestling matches. And I don't even think it's down to star power, because there have been certain people that have fallen into this category that don't feel like we'll use Roman Reigns because he's sort of on top of the industry right now. But they just have their own kind of personality or their own kind of charisma that only they could come up with, and you just see them and you're like, yep, I'm going to follow them forever. Miro, Rusev, that was another guy. When he came in as a Russian, which is kind of offensive in hindsight, with his wife Lana, and there was no reason for it. I was just like, that's my guy. And I support him to this day, even though I barely saw him in wrestling with AEW in 2024. And of course, I got to meet him at All In 2023. That's an amazing moment for me. This is so damn cool. I got to meet Miro, I got to meet Rusev, and maybe to other people they would rather meet. I don't know, who's the biggest person in AEW? And Adam Copeland, who's also an awesome professional wrestler. But that's actually something else we can use. Complete by accident made my brain just pushing me in this direction. Edge and Christian. I was a Christian guy. Why? I knew Edge was great. And when Edge was winning championships, like, of course Edge should win championships. But for some reason, my tum-tum like, yeah, but you keep an eye on this Christian, which is why it always used to infuriate me that Vince McMahon never understood it and never got behind him, which is why also AEW is brilliant, because they brought him in as a big surprise and they pushed him as a top guy, which should have been something that happened from day one. I think I may be repeating myself now, but that's not the point. But I love the concept of the guy. I think everyone needs to have their guy. I know right now you'll be screaming at the screen. Don't scream, just say it in a nice way. You have a guy too. And please, honestly, drop me in the comments below. When you first started watching wrestling, who was your guy? Who's your guy now? Who's going to be your guy tomorrow? It could be someone you haven't even realized yet. Let's take Darius Martin, a random name. People go, oh man, he's hit his peak, is never going to change. You don't know. It's why wrestling is beautiful and wrestling is wonderful. One day you can wake up and Darius Martin does something, he cuts a promo and bam. Harley Cameron, that's another one. She has become the guy for so many people in 2024 because she kept doing entertaining stuff. And maybe that comes comes from a different point of view, because like, eventually you're like, this is too good. She's doing a ventriloquism, and then she's singing, and she's funny. Eventually, like, I just got to support this person, otherwise what the flub am I doing? But you'll still find someone that doesn't get it, and they could change on a dime at any point in the world. So that was basically a massive rant. Maybe it made no sense, but if it did mean something to you, get in those comments, and let's celebrate the guys. Also, please do like the video, share the video, and subscribe. Click the video on the screen, subscribe, notification bell. Otherwise, it is grillermind.com/Simon. You can Simon get 10% off. Simon Miller Fitness launches on YouTube 2025. Sorry for all the people that got mad. I got rid of my fitness content. It is coming back. Patreon.com/Simon316, Simon316 on Instagram and Twitter and all of those kind of things, social media. Simon J. Miller on TikTok, Simon Miller on Cameo. Really enjoy doing the holiday videos, so thank you for that. And buy yourself a present, given that it is the new year. ProWrestlingTees.com/Simon Miller is where all my t-shirts are. And of course, come see me at a wrestling show too soon. And watch the Simon Miller Pro Wrestling Podcast, or listen to it on all good podcast apps. But otherwise, my friends, I truly hope you do have a wonderful 12 months. And I'll talk to you again very soon.